Welcome in, everyone, to our deep dive on Mahatma Gandhi. I think we all know the name and the impact he had, but even just going through these sources, it's amazing how much more there is to learn about him.
It is, yeah, we tend to just picture him as almost like a saintly figure,
Yeah.
but he was so much more complex than that.
Yeah, he was a real person.
Yeah, these sources really bring out the human side of him.
His struggles,
Yeah.
contradictions. I had no idea he was like incredibly shy as a child,
Mm.
but he was drawn to stories of truth and self-sacrifice, which seems to foreshadow so much of his later life.
Absolutely. Those early influences definitely shaped his path, his mother's spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
and it's fascinating how that combined with his upbringing. His father was in politics, despite their simple life, and it all just planted the seeds for his commitment to truth and justice.
Yeah, and then he goes to England. And it's like a complete 180. Trying to fit in as a proper English gentleman, even taking ballroom dancing lessons.
That's the thing about Gandhi, always full of surprises. But even that seemingly odd phase played a role. Immersing himself in a different culture, grappling with those new experiences, it ultimately helped him define his own identity and deepen his spirituality.
Right.
And that's where he delved into texts like the Bhagavad Gita, which had a profound impact on his understanding of duty and purpose.
So it's like all these experiences, even the ones that seemed out of character, were all part of his journey towards finding his voice and his purpose. And then, of course, there's South Africa. That's where things take a dramatic turn. Being thrown off that train just for being Indian, you can almost feel the raw injustice of that moment. It seems like such a turning point.
Definitely a turning point. And it's where the concept of satyagraha truly takes root. Satyagraha is often simplified as passive resistance, but it's so much more than that.
Right. It's about.
It's about harnessing the power of truth
Mm-hmm.
and love, even in the face of oppression.
Mm.
It's about actively resisting injustice with your whole being, not
Mhm.
just physically, but spiritually and morally as well.
Wow, that's a powerful idea. And he put it into practice immediately, taking on discriminatory laws head on, like the Black Act, which was just appalling.
Oh, yeah.
Essentially, it forced Indians to carry passes and be subjected to constant surveillance and control.
It was a blatant attempt to subjugate and dehumanize an entire population,
Yeah.
and facing those injustices head on, even enduring beatings and imprisonment, actually solidified Gandhi's commitment to satyagraha. He realized that true power doesn't come from brute force, but from the unwavering conviction
Yeah.
in doing what's right.
That's powerful. It's incredible how those years in South Africa became this crucible for his beliefs and tactics. And then when he finally returns to India, he doesn't jump straight into the political fray. Instead, he chooses to travel the country extensively, connecting with everyday people and understanding their struggles. That seems like such a deliberate and strategic move.
It speaks volumes about Gandhi's approach.
Yeah.
He understood the importance of listening to the people, understanding their needs and aspirations. This directly ties into his later focus on empowering individuals and communities, encouraging self-reliance, which he exemplified by spinning his own cloth at his ashram.
Wow.
It was a powerful symbol of rejecting dependence on British goods and embracing a simpler, more self-sufficient way of life.
It's so interesting how those personal choices like spinning cloth took on such symbolic weight. But let's talk about some of his early victories in India, the Champaran movement and Keta Satyagraha. These are both instances where he mobilized entire communities through nonviolent methods like boycotts and fasting, and achieved real concessions from the British. It's remarkable how effective those tactics were.
Gandhi was a master strategist,
Yeah.
and he knew how to wield these nonviolent tools to expose injustice and force the hand of the oppressor. He understood that the true power of satyagraha lay in its ability to awaken the conscience of both the oppressed and the oppressor.
And then, of course, there's the Salt March. What an incredible visual. Thousands of people marching 240 miles with Gandhi to protest the British salt tax. Just the sheer audacity of it is mind-blowing.
The Salt March wasn't just a protest.
Yeah.
It was a symbolic act of defiance that captured the world's attention.
Absolutely.
The salt tax was particularly egregious because it hit the poorest Indians the hardest, and Gandhi knew that breaking this law would resonate deeply with the masses. It was a carefully calculated move to expose the injustice of British rule and ignite a nationwide movement of civil disobedience.
It's fascinating how he understood the power of symbolism and how to use it to mobilize people. And then there's the tactic of fasting. It seems so personal, almost spiritual, but he used it to achieve political change as well, right?
Absolutely. Gandhi's fasts weren't just about personal sacrifice. They were strategic acts of moral pressure. Take the communal award crisis, for example. The British proposed separate electorates for different religious groups, which Gandhi feared would further divide India. He fasted in protest, putting immense pressure on the British, and ultimately influencing them to negotiate a more inclusive solution with the Pune Pact.
It's incredible how he could wield something as personal as fasting to achieve such significant political outcomes. It shows a level of strategic thinking that's just mind-boggling.
Exactly. And while his methods were undeniably effective, it's important to remember that Gandhi wasn't without his critics.
That's right. Figures like B.R. Ambedkar, while acknowledging Gandhi's contributions, challenged his approach to issues like caste discrimination. Ambedkar felt that Gandhi's focus on spiritual reform wasn't enough to dismantle the deeply entrenched system of caste hierarchy. He believed that more radical political and social reforms were needed.
It's a crucial point to consider. Even someone as revered as Gandhi had limitations and faced valid criticisms. It reminds us that history is complex, and even the most influential figures have their blind spots.
That's so true. And speaking of complexities, his personal life was full of them as well, wasn't it? I mean, the stories about his fiery temper and his controversial commitment to celibacy, these are not things we typically associate with Gandhi.
It's true. Those aspects of his personal life were often controversial, even within his own circle. And his relationship with his wife Kastuba was a complex one, marked by both love and tension. These details remind us that Gandhi, despite his iconic status, was a human being grappling with his own internal contradictions and personal challenges.
This deep dive is really revealing how multifaceted Gandhi was. He wasn't just a symbol, he was a flesh and blood person with his own struggles and triumphs. It makes me want to explore his story even further.
I agree. And as we move forward, we'll see how those personal complexities intertwined with his political journey, especially as India moved closer to independence. So as we go deeper into Gandhi's later years, we can't ignore the backdrop of World War II. The world was in turmoil, and India's struggle for independence was reaching a fever pitch.
Right, and this is where we see him launch the Quit India movement in 1942, demanding complete independence in the middle of a world war. That took some serious guts.
The Quit India movement was a pivotal moment. It really showed just how resolved the Indian people were in their refusal to be governed by a foreign power.
Yeah, they'd had enough.
Yeah, it was a direct challenge to British authority, and the response was swift and brutal.
The sources talk about mass arrests, violence crackdowns on any dissent.
It was a time of immense sacrifice. But it also showed how effective Gandhi's strategies were. The movement crippled the British administration in India and further exposed the moral bankruptcy of their colonial rule.
So it's incredible how he managed to mobilize an entire nation through nonviolent resistance, even when facing that kind of oppression. And finally, in 1947, it happened. India gained independence.
It did.
But it was a bittersweet victory.
Absolutely. The joy of independence was tragically overshadowed by the partition of India and Pakistan. And the violence and displacement that followed was horrific. It left a deep scar on the newly formed nations.
The sources really show how devastated Gandhi was during this time. Can you imagine achieving your lifelong goal of a free India, only to see such bloodshed and division?
It was a profound tragedy, and it weighed heavily on Gandhi. In his final days, he completely devoted himself to peace, traveling constantly to try and quell the violence and promote unity between Hindus and Muslims.
Wow. So his commitment to nonviolence never wavered, even after all of that.
It's a testament to his unwavering belief in the power of love and forgiveness, even in the darkest of times.
And tragically, it was during this period of intense turmoil that Gandhi was assassinated. On January 30th, 1948, he was shot by a Hindu nationalist who opposed his message of reconciliation.
His assassination was a profound loss for India and the world. It silenced a voice that championed peace and understanding at a time when it was so desperately needed.
It makes you wonder what he could have achieved if he had lived.
It does.
What healing he could have brought.
It's a question that continues to haunt us. But we can find solace in the fact that his legacy lives on. Gandhi's teachings on nonviolence, civil disobedience, and social justice, they've inspired so many movements and individuals around the world.
From the civil rights movement in America to the fight against apartheid in South Africa, his ideas have resonated across cultures and continents. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela, they drew direct inspiration from Gandhi's philosophy of satyagraha.
It's a powerful legacy.
It is.
And Gandhi wasn't a perfect man, but his life and work offer profound lessons about the human capacity for change.
Both personal and societal.
Exactly. And as we reflect on his life, it's important to remember that his message isn't just something for history books.
Right.
His teachings are as relevant today as they were during his lifetime, perhaps even more so.
Absolutely. We live in a world facing some really complex challenges: climate change, social injustice, political polarization. It's easy to feel overwhelmed,
It is.
to think that our individual actions don't matter.
But Gandhi's life teaches us otherwise. It shows us that even amidst immense challenges, individual actions can make a difference if they're guided by a strong moral compass and a commitment to nonviolence.
So his story serves as a powerful reminder that change starts with each of us. It's about examining our own beliefs, confronting our own biases,
Mm.
and finding the courage to speak up and act for what we believe in.
And it's about recognizing our shared humanity. Even with those who hold different views, it's about choosing dialogue over division, understanding over anger, compassion over judgment.
Those are powerful lessons, and ones that we would do well to remember as we navigate the complexities of our own time.
You know, it's easy to look back at Gandhi and think, wow, he was almost superhuman. But I think the real power is that he was just an ordinary man. He had his own doubts and imperfections.
He wasn't born a saint, a superhero. He chose this path,
Yeah,
made mistakes along the way, but ultimately transformed himself through commitment to his ideals.
exactly. And that transformation is something we can all aspire to. He showed us that change starts with self-reflection, questioning our own assumptions and biases.
It really makes you think, if Gandhi could achieve so much through personal transformation, what are we capable of?
That's the real question, isn't it? It's not just about his accomplishments. It's about the enduring power of individual action. He reminds us that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and compassionate world.
And it doesn't have to be about these grand gestures, like leading a revolution or something.
Right.
It can start with small acts of kindness, speaking up against injustice, choosing compassion over judgment.
Those seemingly small choices, multiplied across millions of people, can have such a ripple effect. They transform communities and ultimately the world. That's the true power of Satyagraha, the power of collective moral action.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Gandhi's life, I'm struck by a sense of hope. He faced such incredible challenges, witnessed unimaginable violence, but never lost faith in humanity.
And that faith, that belief in love and nonviolence, that's what continues to inspire people today. He showed us that a better world is possible, not through force, but through understanding and compassion.
It's a powerful message to carry with us. Gandhi reminds us that even when things feel dark and divided, the power to change lies within each of us.
As we navigate the complexities of our own time, remember his words. Be the change you wish to see in the world.
What a powerful thought. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the life and legacy of Mahatma Gandhi.